last few videos I started to work on restoring a miniature 12th scale greenhouse that I'd made many years ago for my mum that accompanies this doll's house here, that's also in need of some repair itself. So the plan is that the miniature greenhouse will sit to the right of this doll's house in the space, and I was hoping that I could put a piece of wood here which I could cover in gravel so that there could be a little sort of garden area around the side of the doll's house and maybe in front of it as well. This greenhouse did previously have a base that was made with gravel and little bricks around the greenhouse, so I may well try and remove these bricks at some point so that I can reuse them, but I'm not sure yet. To get a little bit of inspiration for this greenhouse, we decided to go and visit a place called Belton Estate, which is in Lincolnshire. It's a National Trust property and it has a huge greenhouse. So we decided to have a little walk around the gardens and the grounds and have a look in the greenhouse to think up some inspiration for what to put in and around the miniature greenhouse. So we started by walking down the gravel path and there were alliums lining the pathway. Alliums are one of my favourite flowers. I absolutely love them, and in my own garden at the moment they're just starting to appear. We love the different colours of foliage, and there was even this pond. Now, I don't think that the plan is for me to make a pond for my mum's doll's house, but who knows? If you'd like to see a pond, please do let me know in the comments. Obviously, this greenhouse is a little larger than my greenhouse. It has a stone floor, and inside it has some huge plants. I really liked the woodwork around the windows. I especially liked the little lock here, and I really liked the stone floor. I did wonder whether it was worth making a stone floor for my mum's greenhouse, but I'm not sure. There are even ponds inside this greenhouse, and the detailing on the roof was beautiful. We saw all different types of flowers inside this greenhouse. Outside the greenhouse there was this beautiful area of walled garden. It had some trees in it and round the edges were roses climbing up the walls. I'd never been to Belton Estate before, but I was so impressed with all of the grounds. It was a lovely walk and we could have actually gone further. Maybe we'll go back one day. I'm not sure what these flowers are. If anyone knows, please can you leave it in the comments for me, because I thought they were really pretty. This was a really beautiful climbing rose. I have a climbing rose in my own garden which I've pruned back quite a lot this year because it was growing really tall to reach the sunlight above some other plants. But so far it doesn't really look like it's growing back as much as I thought it would, so I'm hoping that it's okay and I've not pruned it back too far. I'm not really an expert on roses, I'm never sure how far to prune them back, but I do have some smaller rose trees in my garden which I pruned back quite far and they're doing really well and have lots of buds on them, so I'm not sure, maybe you have to do different things to different roses. I think that this was wild garlic all along the side of the river. The reason I think that is because it smelt like wild garlic, but I'm not sure. So again, if anyone knows, please do let me know in the comments. The tree is beautiful. When I arrived back home, it was time to continue working on the greenhouse. So this is what it looked like at the end of the last video. And it was time to start adding some of the detail. So I started by measuring out different pieces of wood to go all around the greenhouse. I've decided this time to only have vertical pieces of wood as the detail across the windows, just because when I had vertical and horizontal pieces for the last greenhouse, it didn't look very neat. I worked out that I wanted to put these vertical pieces of wood 5 centimetres apart, so I'd counted how many pieces I would need and I trimmed them all to size. These are the pieces of wood that I'd bought from Scrap Store in the last video. I trimmed the pieces using these mitre shears, and I'd found that they were quite difficult to cut through. So I started by just scoring along the line like this, and then I found that it was a little easier to make the actual cuts by using the end of the shears. As you can see, the little pieces of wood were flying off in all different directions as I cut them, so I had to go around finding them all afterwards. In some areas I needed to trim the plastic down a little bit because it didn't fit quite correctly. And here I needed to cut some additional pieces of wood so that they would cover the wood that I forgot to paint in the last video. I was trimming a lot of different pieces of wood to size, so I decided to make some little labels and keep them in tiny bundles so that I knew where they would go after I'd painted them. I didn't want them to all get muddled up. This area was particularly difficult to work out because of the different angles. So these two bits were for the top of the porch on the right hand side. I also wanted some vertical pieces of wood to go down the roof like this, and I needed to cut some of the pieces of wood at different angles. These bits would be the vertical pieces that would go on the front of the roof. Then it was time to paint them. So I popped a sheet down, which is my painting sheet, over my tablecloth. So the tablecloth is there to protect the table and the sheet is there to protect the tablecloth. I was using a little piece of spare wood just to keep each piece of wood in place as I was painting it, to stop it from moving around. So I left these to dry, and then after they dried, I then had to turn them all over and paint the other side. I did have a little bit of a problem when my cat decided that she wanted to jump onto the table and have a look to see what I was doing. I didn't want her to walk across all of these pieces of wood, especially whilst they were wet. So I decided that we should go outside into the garden whilst these were left to dry. It was a really lovely day, and seeing as we'd had a little look around Belton Estate at all of the lovely flowers growing there, I thought I'd have a look and see what was growing in my garden. So my wisteria is in full bloom at the moment. It's beautiful and it smells really lovely. Soon I think the bees will all arrive. There's always a point where I will go out and suddenly the bees will have arrived and be covering the whole wisteria. It's not quite happened yet, but I think it'll happen in a day or two. The poppies are also starting to appear, and these are the little rose trees that I said that I'd pruned quite far back but seem to be quite happy. They've got lots of buds on them. Whilst the pieces of wood were still inside drying, I decided to work on a different project. So you may know from watching some of my other videos that I have a little Etsy shop because I design greetings cards and I sell them. At Christmas time I also did some craft fairs, and I've decided to do a couple of craft fairs during the summer. I've been looking out for a second-hand card stand for a while because I wanted to add a card stand to my stall, and I found this one being advertised for free. So I went and collected it, and I'm so grateful to the person that was giving it away because This is exactly what I needed. It's just the right size and it's going to make such a difference to my stall. So whilst the weather was nice, I decided to give it a bit of a clean because it's been in my garage for a few weeks. And I am thinking of painting it black to match some of the other items that I use to display things on my stall. So just some examples of my most recent card designs. I've been working on some Father's Day cards and also some thank you cards, with it being the end of the school year soon. So these are on my Etsy shop. I'll pop a link in the description just in case you want to visit. You don't have to though. So back to the greenhouse. When these pieces of wood were dry, I started to remove them from the plastic sheet, but some of them had stuck down, and you can see here that some of them have some rough edges where the paint had dried over the sheet as well as the wood. I gathered them all together, keeping them in the same little bundles that they were in before, and I started to stick them down to the greenhouse. I decided to use the same method that I'd used in previous videos with double-sided tape, because I was worried that the glue could be seen through the plastic windows and might look a little bit messy. But I am also concerned that this double-sided tape won't quite be strong enough to hold the wood in place and that over time it might dry out a little bit, but we'll see. One thing that I did find a little bit difficult here was that the double-sided tape was sticking to the pieces of wood at the top and bottom, but then when it stuck to the little glass window, well, plastic window, it meant that the piece of wood bent inwards slightly, because obviously the piece of wood at the top and the bottom were slightly in front of the piece of plastic. I wasn't sure whether I should maybe just stick the pieces of wood at the top and bottom, or if I should stick them to the plastic, because that would make it a little bit stronger. I decided that it would probably look best not to stick these pieces to the plastic, but then as I started sticking them down, they then started falling off, so then I had to stick them to the plastic. You might have noticed a few seconds ago that before adding the double-sided tape, I did try to remove all of the bits of rough paint that were on each piece of wood. Now obviously it took quite a long time to stick each piece of wood down, but I took my time and tried to do it carefully. These little pieces are quite hard to attach at the top in the triangular area because they didn't have much sort of surface area to stick to. Especially because I was trying not to stick them too much to the plastic. My system of keeping the wood in tiny little bundles worked really well, but I did end up with some spare pieces of painted wood at the end, so I'm not quite sure how that happened, but I would much rather have some spare pieces left over than have run out, so I don't mind. I gently placed the pieces of wood down at this point and not pressed them down firmly, just in case I felt that one was not quite at the right angle or if I thought it wasn't spaced correctly. So once I'd put them all in position, I then started to press them more firmly into position. I then continued on the roof at the front and I worked on the little porch. I do wish that I had remembered to paint these pieces of wood in the last video before sticking them down, but never mind. I covered them with sort of a double piece of wood on each side. And I also put some wood down here just to neaten off the front of the porch. I used some of the spare pieces of wood to just edge the porch at the top here, and if I noticed any areas where I didn't think it had stuck down properly, I added a little bit of glue. So I now needed to test to check that everything was stuck down securely, so I decided to turn the greenhouse upside down. Thankfully, it did all appear to be stuck in place. At this point, it would have been quite a task to stick everything back down if it had all fallen off, but thankfully it didn't. I decided to give the plastic a little bit of a clean because it had some areas where I'd got a little bit of paint on it, and also everything was kind of sticking to it. So this is what the greenhouse was looking like. So in this tub I had the little tissue that I'd written the measurements on when I was trying to work out what sort of area I needed for the gravel base for this to sit on. I had a piece of wood which I was hoping I'd be able to use as the base, but when I measured it, it was far too small. So I decided to take the greenhouse round to my mum's to have a look to see where its position would be and to work out where to go from there. This was the original base for the greenhouse that has the little bricks. As you can see, the new greenhouse is a slightly different size, so it doesn't fit here. But I wasn't going to be using this base anyway because it has this split in it. So I now need to decide whether to remove all of the bricks from this original base and to still use them. And I also need to decide what sort of base to put underneath this greenhouse. So I could have just a small base that runs just here, or I could have a larger one that goes in front of the greenhouse. Really, I'd like one that goes all the way in front of the doll's house as well to make the greenhouse look connected to the doll's house, but I'm not sure. What do you think? Please let me know in the comments. I also need to bring my paint round because there's a little area at the front of the porch at the top there, which isn't painted because I'd trimmed the wood down a little bit. I'm not sure what to do next. I don't know whether to work on the base of the greenhouse or whether to actually help my mum to fix the full doll's house because the doors need some repair work doing. And of course I've also got my own doll's house to be working on. So please let me know if there's anything in particular that you would like to see next. And thanks for watching the video. I really hope you've enjoyed it. Please do leave a comment and I hope that you have a lovely week. Bye!